I always noticed how Sarah would look at me with a mix of affection and skepticism, like she was frightened I wouldn't be enough for her. It made my heart ache. On what should have been the finest day of my life, Sarah left me standing at the altar, and my head spun like a top, full of confusion. In a moment of fear, I turned to Megan, Sarah's opponent, and without really thinking, I urged her to take Sarah's position. It felt like a quick fix, but as I stood there, exchange vows that sounded empty, I started to wonder if I really wanted Megan or if I was just attempting to replace the massive hole Sarah left behind. The reality started to surface in ways I never expected, putting me on a journey I didn't see coming. As I stood at the altar, the truth crashed over me like a frigid wave. The wedding I had envisioned was not this one. I ought to have been joyful, but I was overwhelmed by a whirlwind of emotions. Sarah was supposed to be here, but she disappeared, and now I have to make a decision I didn't anticipate. The burden of my decisions was pressing heavily on my chest as I glanced at the guests, who were perplexed. In that moment, I faced what I'd done. I requested Megan, Sarah's opponent, to take Sarah's place. I felt more like I was playing a risky game, even if I believed I was being clever. Dreadful trust issues encircled me. I pushed through the regret because I didn't want to miss out on the joy. I felt a knot twist in my stomach as I grasped Megan's hand and exchanged vows. I had no love for the person I was about to wed. Sarah broke my heart. What was I doing? I needed to grow. But how could I when I was locked in this mess? The ceremony dragged on, but my mind raced. I was surrounded by family and friends, yet I felt utterly alone. I must face my sentiments and the truth of my conduct. Suddenly, the doors burst open. Sarah stood there, her eyes burning. "You think you can replace me?" she shouted, her voice slashing through the tension. Megan stepped forward, rebellious. "I'm not going anywhere, Sarah. This is my moment." I felt the room move. Gasps echoed as the truth hung in the air. I was trapped in a maelstrom of falsehoods and heartbreak. "Sarah, wait!" I screamed out, but she turned away, tears flowing down her face. As soon as Sarah turned to leave, my heart felt like it was breaking into a million pieces. It hit me fast, like a thunderstorm out of nowhere. Everyone around us gasped, their faces reflecting astonishment and perplexity, but I was lost in my own maelstrom. I'd spent so long visualizing our future together, and now she was just walking away. What happened? I thought. Her eyes, once so sparkling with love, now blazed with fury. I wanted to shout for her to come back, to say I was sorry, to tell her I loved her. But my feet wouldn't move. I was paralyzed in shock. How could she do this? Suddenly, I spotted Megan amid the crowd. She was Sarah's nemesis, always ready to stir up problems. In my horror, I cried, "Megan, come here." Without thinking, I encouraged her to take Sarah's place. It was a stupid choice, made in a moment of terror. I only wanted someone to fill the massive emptiness Sarah left behind. But I'd no idea how wrong I was. Everything felt distorted. I was going to marry someone I didn't love, while Sarah moved away, leaving turmoil in her wake. I felt stuck in a tangle of my own making. What have I done? I wondered, my heart beating. "Are you serious?" Megan smirked, stepping forward. "You really want me instead of her?" "No. I don't know." I mumbled, panic fueling my voice. People were conversing, eyes flashing between us. I felt their judgment like a huge weight. I'd made a choice in the heat of the moment, and now I was forced to cope with the aftermath. "Don't you see? She didn't want you." Megan's voice dripped with delight. "Shut up," I yelled, the heat of betrayal coursing through me. "You don't know anything." But deep down, I knew she was right. I was standing at the altar, ready to marry someone who wasn't Sarah. The reality of my activities crashed over me like a wave. I was caught in a web of my own creating. All because I didn't chase after the one I truly loved. Panic hit me like a punch to the gut. My chest felt constricted, and I could hardly breathe. Sarah had just walked away from our wedding, and I was left standing there, pulse hammering, feeling lost. Then I recognized Megan, Sarah's opponent, standing among the crowd. Without thinking, I called her over. "Hey Megan, come here," I shouted, my voice shaky. Megan smirked as she approached. I knew she thrived on competition, and pulling her into this turmoil was a poor idea. But I was desperate. My thoughts was a tangled mess of wedding fear and remorse. I never intended to upset Sarah, but now I was bringing in someone who'd only make things worse. Are you serious? Megan lifted an eyebrow. You want me to take her place? I halted, but the panic pushed me ahead. Just come stand with me, I mumbled. The crowd swirled around us, but I felt like I was in a nightmare. I was replacing someone I loved with a rival who thrived on chaos. My stomach twisted. What was I doing? As I stood there with Megan, I could feel the weight of my mistakes crushing me. I'd allowed my damaged heart lead me to this moment. Each pounding of my heart reminded me how terrible this was. Why are you so tense? Megan taunted, leaning closer. This is your big day. Shut up, I yelled, feeling the shame sweep over me. The ceremony proceeded, but I felt like I was slipping away in a veil of humiliation. I glanced around, half expecting Sarah to come back, but she didn't. I'd messed up big time. I must confront my decisions, but how? I felt stuck, drowning in the turmoil I'd manufactured. Are you really going to let her just walk away? Megan muttered, her smile bright. I clenched my hands. I don't know. While I stood there, my heart racing after Sarah departed, I scanned the room like a hawk hunting for prey. Panic pinched my chest, making it hard to breathe. People chatted and laughed around me, but I felt absolutely alone. Then, through the pandemonium, I saw Megan. She stood a bit apart, her firm stance breaking through my bewilderment. Megan was usually at odds with Sarah, but right then, she felt like my only hope. I could detect a spark of interest in her eyes. Was she reading my desperation? I felt torn. Part of me wanted to run, while another half was thrilled to see her. I was seeking for someone to fill the empty gap Sarah left, and there was Megan, ready to step in. Megan, I called out, my voice shaking. She walked over, resolve written all over her face. The air between us crackled with stress. Inviting her into my life felt hazardous, like I was asking for trouble. But what option did I have? Her smile was both warm and chilling. Doubts smashed in my head. Did I really want to be with someone who always argued with Sarah? Yet, I was sinking rapidly. I needed to act. My heart screamed for clarity, but all I could do was follow my impulses and pray it wouldn't end poorly. Megan, I need you, I murmured, worry rising into my voice. She nodded, her eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite place. Was it pity or something darker? The crowd swirled around us, but in that moment, it was just us. As I stood there, my heart racing and my mind in confusion on what was going to be my wedding day, I had to make a big step. Sarah had just stormed off, leaving me feeling lost and confused. Then I recognized Megan, Sarah's opponent, in the crowd. I didn't even think twice. I waved her over. This was ridiculous. I knew it was a poor idea, but I felt a curious draw toward Megan. My heart was still suffering for Sarah, but I was desperate. Megan, I need you to step in for Sarah, I blurted out. Betrayal flashed in my head, but I pushed it away. What was I doing? Did I truly want to marry someone who wasn't my genuine love? Megan seemed horrified but soon concealed it with a smirk. Are you serious? She questioned, eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite interpret. Yeah, I'm serious. Just do it. I shot back, feeling a mix of panic and guilt sweep over me. This choice was dangerous. I could feel the weight of it bearing down on me. I'd replaced Sarah in a moment of terror, and I was heading into a trap that may wreck everything. Fine, Megan responded, stepping closer. But you know this isn't going to end well, right? I wanted to scream, to tell her that I didn't care. But deep down, I knew she was right. I'd just taken a choice that could lead to grief and regrets. My life was sinking, and I was losing control. Suddenly, the audience began to mutter, and I could see the surprised faces of our visitors. What is happening? Someone yelled. I glanced at Megan, who was now pretending to be Sarah, and my gut twisted. This was going to be the happiest day of my life, but instead, it felt like a cruel joke. I'd allowed greed and desperation drive my heart, and now I was stuck in a web of my own invention. The ritual kicked off with a heavy hush, like a dense fog sweeping in. I stood at the altar, my heart racing, surrounded by friends and relatives. Wedding expectations weighed over me, but instead of joy, I felt a whirlwind of feelings. Sarah's disappearance was a stinging ache in my chest. I'd chosen obligation over love, asking Megan to stand in for Sarah without recognizing the mess I was walking into. As I exchanged vows with Megan, I saw her grin didn't reach her eyes. It felt artificial, like a mask masking something deeper. "Are you sure about this?" A voice in my head shouted. Was I abandoning Sarah or myself? The trust concerns came up, and I felt like I was lying to everyone there. I was marrying someone I didn't love, and it seemed wrong. Megan remained there, a continuous reminder of unforeseen rivalries and tangled passions. Deep down, I knew this was a tremendous mistake, but pushing Sarah away had trapped me. I felt like a puppet in a game I never wanted to play. I had to address these feelings head on. I needed to figure out how I ended up here. As the ceremony carried on, the weight of my alternatives weighed down on me. This moment was meant to be unique, but could I find a way to make it right? Suddenly, Megan moved in close, her voice just above a whisper. "You can still back out. It's not too late." My heart raced. Did she really mean that, or was it another game? I gazed at the guests, their looks a blend of expectation and concern. "I can't," I said, my voice wavering. "I've made my choice." Gossip rushed through the gathering like lightning, buzzing in the air. I felt their words pushing down on me, heavy and stifling. Everyone was talking about how I'd invited Megan instead of Sarah. Their eyes flashed between us, scrutinizing every motion I made. It was like a game where I was the only one who didn't know the rules. "Did you see him call Megan over?" A woman muttered, doubt lingering in her voice. "What's Sarah going to say?" Another added, a smirk dawning over her face. It was as if the wedding reports had come alive, whirling out of control, and I was trapped square in the middle. Their comments wounded me, reminding me of my betrayal. I'd picked Sarah's rival, and now I was drowning in their judgment. The laughing around me felt phony, and the grins were tight-lipped. I was a pawn in their cruel game, and I didn't even know how I got here. Every chuckle reinforced my stupid choice, leaving me feeling confined and sorry. As I stood with Megan, exchanging promises, the weight of their talk loomed over me like a thundercloud, ready to break. Would I ever break free from this web of whispers? Then, just as I thought things couldn't get worse, I spied Sarah in the corner, her eyes flaming with fury. The room went silent as she stepped forward. "You think this is okay?" she shouted, her voice piercing across the air. "You've made a fool of yourself." Megan's smile dimmed, and I felt the heat of shame sweep over me. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," I muttered, but the words seemed weak. Sarah's look was unrelenting, and I recognized that I'd stepped into a trap I couldn't escape. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the next move. Would I stand by Megan, or would I try to fix things with Sarah? The option hung heavily in the air, and I knew whatever I selected would change everything. Regret stuck to me like a heavy blanket, making it impossible to breathe. I couldn't avoid the awful judgments I'd made. Sarah had left away, and I mistakenly let her rival, Megan, into my life. What was I thinking? Each time I thought about that day, a flood of guilt washed over me. "I messed up," I mumbled to myself, feeling a knot tighten in my chest. I owed Sarah an apology. But did it really matter now? My heart raced as I pictured her face, the hurt in her eyes. I'd chosen a path of falsehoods, and now I was stuck in a tangle of my own creating. Healing felt far away, like a distant destination I might never reach. Every day was a fight. I tried to move on, but the lessons from my blunders tormented me. I had to accept what I did, but acceptance was hard when I felt so lost. What if I could fix this? I thought, my heart racing. I hoped for a chance to make things right, but could I truly face Sarah again? The thought made my hands sweaty. "I have to do it," I murmured, resolution coming into my voice. I had to own up to my acts, no matter how much it hurt. I couldn't let the weight of regret crush me forever. I had to face it. That afternoon, I found myself standing in front of Sarah's door, my heart beating. I took a deep breath and knocked. Would she even want to see me? The door flung open, and there she stood, surprise flashing in her eyes. "Why are you here?" she questioned, her voice stern. "I need to talk," I said, feeling the weight of my words. I botched up, "I'm sorry." As I spoke, I noticed her walls start to shake. "You think an apology fixes everything?" She shot back, wrath mixed with hurt. "No, but it's a start," I responded, my voice firm. "I have to face what I did. You deserve that much." For a minute, stillness hovered between us, dense and strained. The air buzzed with unspoken feelings. I could see the anger in her eyes, but also a spark of something softer. "Fine," she responded last, stepping away. "Let's talk." As I stepped in, I realized this was only the beginning of a long road ahead. But at least I was ready to confront it. Megan's smile transformed into something fierce and deadly as I caught her sight from across the room. It made my stomach churn. Today was my wedding day, and instead of feeling pleased, I felt stuck. I'd invited her, believing everything would be great. But now I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. She stared at me like she was ready for a fight, and I couldn't shake the notion that she'd a secret motive. I stood there, feeling the weight of my decisions. The delight I should have felt was buried under a mountain of sorrow. Megan thrived on the tension, her smile a reminder of my old scars. I'd tried to fill the empty space Sarah left, but now I was drowning in confusion. Megan liked seeing me squirm. And it was evident she wasn't simply a buddy. "Why did you even invite me?" Megan asked, her voice soft as silk but with an edge. I could feel the room shrink around us, my heart thumping. "I thought we could all get along," I said, producing a smile that felt phony. "Get along, or are you just attempting to replace Sarah?" Her eyes flashed with joy. I wanted to shout that I wasn't trying to replace anyone. I was just trying to move on. But her remarks struck deep, and I felt like a puppet in her sick game. Every gaze she fired my way felt like a dare, daring me to unravel my secrets. "I'm not a pawn," I muttered, squeezing my hands. "Maybe not, but you're playing a dangerous game," she muttered, moving closer. The excitement in her voice was disturbing, and I knew she was embracing this pandemonium. The instant I discovered I'd been duped, a feeling of betrayal hit me hard. It felt like I couldn't breathe. I'd trusted Megan, but suddenly I saw all the fractures in our connection. Betrayal was like a gigantic snowball sliding down a hill, smashing everything in its route. I thought I was moving on, but instead, I fell into a tangled knot of trust problems and secrets. As I tried to make sense of this chaos, I discovered how tough love could be. I went from Sarah's pain to Megan's brilliant smile without realizing the risk ahead. Each day felt like a war, packed with treachery and despair. I realized I'd to find my own strength. It wasn't just about me. Sarah needed answers too. I needed to understand what went wrong not just with Megan, but with myself. Every day was a tornado of feelings. I wanted to heal, but anguish and confusion wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. I thought Megan could bring me consolation. But instead, I encountered evil that threatened to devour me whole. This second shot at love felt like a weight I'd to flee before it crushed me. "Why can't you just trust me?" Megan shouted one night, her eyes flaming with wrath. "Because you keep changing the rules." I shot back, rage pouring over. As the days went on, being with Megan seemed like walking a tightrope. One incorrect move, and everything may come crumbling down. I should have been delighted about the wedding, but instead, I was enmeshed in confusion. Megan had a way for warping my thinking, and I could feel covert motives lurking around every turn. I remembered recruiting a rival to take Sarah's place, and now I was entangled in a web of falsehoods and trust problems. The craziness of the wedding day left me exposed, and now I was entangled in a love triangle I never wanted. Every time Megan smiled, it felt like a reminder of my betrayal to Sarah. "Megan, where do you go when you disappear for hours?" I inquired one night, rage overflowing over. She shrugged, a cheeky smirk flickering on her lips. "Just living my life," she said, but her words felt like daggers. I was alone with my rushing thoughts, stuck like a pawn in her game. Each conversation with her generated a fresh rivalry, making me second-guess my judgments. I needed to find my way back to the love I lost, but first, I'd to face the storm forming in my heart. I couldn't keep living in this mess. "You're hiding something," I remarked, looking straight at her. She laughed faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You think you can figure me out? Good luck." I let things get out of hand. I thought I was in control, but now I felt like I was sinking. I'd want to talk to Sarah. She was the only one who could assist me fix this situation. My pulse raced with both fear and a gleam of hope. I realized I'd to fix what I'd broken. I spotted Sarah in a small cafe. Just seeing her made me feel warm and chilled at the same time. Memories poured back, some joyous, some like heavy stones. I took a deep breath and sat down. "I'm really sorry for everything," I murmured, my voice wavering. I could see her sorrow, it matched mine own. "Why did you invite Megan?" She yelled back, her voice harsh. "You replaced me like I didn't matter." Her comment stung like a bee. I wanted to shout that it wasn't about her, that I was caught in a trap I never wanted. We talked for hours, expressing our realities. It hit me how much we both needed to recover. I needed her to forgive me, and she needed to let out her hurt. Slowly, we started to remedy what was broken. It wasn't easy, but I felt the bits fitting together again. This was our first meaningful move toward mending. But I was terrified it would be too late. I strolled out of the cafe, my heart hammering like a drum. I'd just faced Sarah, and it felt like I was carrying a hefty bag full of boulders. I'd to face my past, the anguish I caused her when I brought Megan into the picture. Each step was like mounting a cliff, my worries trying to pull me back down. I felt torn inside. I'd hurried into a wrong choice, seeking to find comfort in a mess instead of taking time to recover. It was hard to face those feelings. I thought I could hide them, but they merely grew bigger, like a monster under my bed. I understood that to heal, I had to own up to my mistakes and cope with what followed next. As I walked, memories hit me in waves. The delight, the love, and the searing agony when Sarah walked away. I had to take blame. I couldn't stay hiding from the reality anymore. Each breath I took seemed a bit lighter. Facing my worries was daunting, but I knew I had to do it. I wanted to make things right and really sorry. I was ready to face my mistakes and seek forgiveness. I needed to heal not just for Sarah, but for my own damaged heart. Suddenly, I glimpsed Sarah ahead, her back turned to me. I wanted to call out, to rush up to her, but my feet felt locked to the ground. "Sarah!" I called out, my voice trembling. She turned slowly, her eyes wide with surprise. "What do you want?" she questioned, her tone piercing like a razor. "I need to talk," I replied, taking a step closer. "I botched up. I'm sorry for everything." Her face hardened. "Sorry? That doesn't change what you did." "I know," I said, feeling the weight of her words. "But I want to make it right. Please, just give me a chance." She sighed, crossing her arms. "You really think you can change?" "I have to try," I murmured, dread creeping into my voice. "For you. For us." A glimmer of optimism flared in her eyes, and I knew I must hang on to it. The struggle was far from done, but at least I was ready to fight. I stood there, facing Sarah, and I felt the weight of my mistakes weighing down on me. No more running. I was raw and vulnerable, surrounded by the disaster I'd caused. I'd brought Megan into my life to fill a hole. But all I did was damage the one person who actually mattered, Sarah. "Why did you do it?" Sarah's speech was steady but crisp, cutting through the stress. "I thought I could find something I was missing," I acknowledged, my heart thumping. "But I see now that I just pushed you away. You treated me like a backup." She shouted back, hurt blazing in her eyes. "Like my love was just a game to you." I took a long breath, attempting to find the appropriate words. I was afraid. I let fear control me. I messed up, and I need to own it. "Own it?" she repeated, skepticism obvious in her voice. "How do you even plan to fix this?" "I want to tell you how much I admire your strength," I began, but she shook her head. "Don't patronize me. You think saying nice things will erase what you did?" "No. I want to be honest. I owe you that much," I murmured, my voice firming. "I'm ready to face the truth, even if it hurts." Sarah's gaze softened for a moment, but then her barriers went back up. "You think it's that easy? You broke my trust." I know I messed up big time. But I want to make everything right, even if it means risking everything I've left," I begged. "Why should I believe you?" she questioned, folding her arms. "You've already shown me who you really are." "Because I'm ready to change," I argued. "I can't keep hiding from what I did. I need you to see that I want to fight for us." Sarah took a step back, her eyes narrowing. "Fighting for us? You mean battling for your own guilt?" I felt a flood of sadness. "No, I'm fighting for you, for us. I'll prove it, I swear." "Prove it, then," she remarked, her voice calm but cold. "Show me that you're worth the risk." As I stood there, I understood this was my moment. I had to face the repercussions of my actions, even if it hurt. I couldn't let my faults define me. "I will, Sarah. I'll do everything it takes to gain your trust back, I said. Her face softened just a touch, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. I was ready to face the battle ahead, no matter how dark it might get. The route to atonement was hard, but I was determined to walk it. I was done with Megan's lies. I felt stuck, like a fly caught in a web, and I couldn't let her rule me anymore. It was time to take back my life. Sarah's letter sat in front of me, telling me of the love I'd lost and the mistakes I committed. I needed to face my concerns and approach the person who'd been manipulating my strings. I created a plan. I'd call out Megan on her trickery, unearth her secrets, and demand the truth. No more hiding. I picked our living room for the showdown, a place where we could face each other without interruptions. My heart raced as I thought what I'd say. Finally, the moment came. The air crackled with excitement. I took a large breath and looked straight at her. "Megan, we need to talk," I replied, my voice firm. I wasn't going to back down. I refused to let fear keep me silent any longer. This was my life, and I was willing to fight for it, no matter the cost. "Megan, you've been lying to me," I blurted out. Her eyes widened, surprise blazing across her face. "I know what you've done. You can't control me anymore." She tried to twist the words, but I interjected. "No more games. I want the truth." My heart beat as the tension between us grew thicker. Megan smirked, but I noticed a break in her confidence. "You think you can just walk away? You have no idea what you're up against," she shouted back, her words dripping with anger. "I don't care," I shouted. "I'm done with your trickery. This finishes now." With every syllable, I felt stronger. I was ready to break free from the mayhem she brought into my life. The struggle was on, and I was prepared to fight for my freedom, even if it meant risking everything. As I stood in the living room, the air felt heavy, like a storm was ready to hit. Anger boiled inside me, mingling with terror. Tonight was the night I'd face Megan, the lady I'd carelessly let into my life. Regrets about my marriage gnawed at me, reminding me of the affection I'd lost. I paced back and forth, heart racing, knowing I'd have addressed the disaster I'd produced. When she strolled in, a smug look plastered on her face, something snapped inside me. "We need to talk," I replied, my voice firm despite the pandemonium spinning in my mind. She lifted an eyebrow, delighted in my misery. That made me even angrier. "You think this is a game, don't you?" I shot back, feeling the tension rising. She chuckled, a frigid, mocking sound that filled the room. "I gave you a chance," she mocked. "But you're just too weak." Her words stung, sparking a fire in my chest. I realized right then that I couldn't let her rule me anymore. I stepped closer, my heart thumping louder. "You may have taken Sarah's place, but you'll never take her love." In that moment, it clicked. I'd allowed my loneliness cloud my judgment, and that had to stop. Walking away from this pandemonium was my only way out. I stood erect, ready to strike back, determined to break free from her venomous hold. The moment I stood my ground, everything changed. Tension permeated the air like a bubble about to explode. Chaos exploded all around me, and I felt the betrayal sink in. I'd brought Megan, my opponent, into a situation I couldn't handle. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a maelstrom of emotions, a conflict I never saw coming. Each day felt like a war, packed with treachery and despair. I remembered chaos theory, how minor things may lead to massive problems. I understood just how true it was when I saw the look in Megan's eyes, a mix of success and malice. Trust problems entered my head. I'd traded one problem for another. My typical techniques of coping with difficulties broke. I was lost, caught up in figuring out who I truly was. Facing Megan, I spotted the turn. I believed I was taking care of my life, but I was ensnared in her web of manipulation. My selection seemed like a wave crashing down on me. It pushed me to grow, encouraging me to face my anxieties and heal. This wasn't just about Sarah or Megan, it was about me. I had to dig deep to find my way through the storm. With every breath, I realized I had to stand up for myself. My walk through this pandemonium would change everything. I needed to come out stronger, ready to take back what I lost and realize who I truly was. "Why did you have to come here, Megan?" I shouted, rage swelling up. She smirked. "Because I knew you couldn't resist." "You're toxic," I shot back, fists clenched. "Maybe, but you invited me," she scoffed. Heart thumping, I realized I'd to fight back. This was my life, and I wouldn't let her win. With a strong nod, I walked forward. No more running. It was time to restore my tail.